Welcome YouTube, it's Chobra, and after the first week of VCT Pacific Kickoff, we already have quite a few fun matches to take a look at. However, today I want to take a quick look at not a whole match or certain compositions, but specifically how one team and a certain player is playing a particular agent. And that agent is going to be VETO. Now, while the sample size is small, because we've only had 1 week and a total of maximum 2 matches for any team, you can tell that Global Esports is quite set on their take on the meta. Because while most teams are concerning themselves with some sort of variation of double duelists with the Yoru, right? Most, of course, notably the Waylay, maybe the Neon, depending on the team and player, and then some other teams, or maybe combining those two and going with the double controller, using the Viper plus Astra or Omen, depending on the map. And of course, now and then we're still seeing the Chamber pop up with the map pool that we have. We are seeing Global Esports play VETO on all of their games so far. Now, there is a repeat of Split, but even without that, that's 4 maps that we've seen them out of the 7 where they have a VETO for their Sentinel. And you know what? I'm okay with that, because I believe this is the first team and first player that I have watched where I have full faith that they understand how to use VETO and what they want to do with it. Is it always the cleanest? Is it always successful? Not necessarily, but it is not just stock standard stuff. It's not the basic level of stuff. There's enough variation, and the take that they have on how this operates with the rest of the team is quite good. So let's take a look. Now, GE did end up, unfortunately, losing this match, although I would almost argue that they should have won, and probably the biggest reason they lost is because it was Paper Rex on the other side. You match them up with any other team that was kind of playing the same style against them on the same map pool, they probably take this best of 3 on that same day. But even there, even within the loss, I think we saw similar ideas that they showcased even in their first match, carrying over and showing us why they're sticking with the VETO. Now, we're not going to watch too much defense. I have maybe 1 or 2 rounds here, but it's mostly about the attack, because defense, at the very least, even if you play the most basic thing, of, okay, I'm going to put a little trap over on mid, and then I'm going to put my TPs for faster rotates, like, that's already good enough to get some value. Obviously, it's not going to hold up throughout an entire match in a pro setting, but that's good enough. But on attack, it's always felt a little bit iffy. Teams not really sure how they want to use the VETO or how they want to pace around it. Let's take a look at what GE does. One of the first things they do is they utilize the fact that you can throw his trap. He can throw it far, and so that way he's not going to be saving it or using it right away in the beginning. He's not always saving it for a post plant to throw somewhere deep like here or here necessarily, but after the barriers drop, you're getting an extension of your map control immediately. And this is big, because one of the biggest things about Valorant that differs from other attack FPSs is the fact that you basically start in the middle of the map, right? You start very close to each other if you want it to. That's why some rounds end so quickly. But now you're saying, oh, actually, technically, I am starting all the way out here. Now, the defenders might hear it, right? But the reason I actually like this particular one on Breeze is because you could try to throw one, somewhere here. You could try to throw this as a regular one, but these are fairly easily taken out, right? If you're trying to throw one just somewhere in the middle of the ground here, that can be spotted from mid. If you're trying to throw it right into the doorway, obviously that can be spotted from the door. And maybe they can take it out right away, or they can kind of abuse that against you. We know it's there, but we're not going to work around it. But this one in elbow, you might hear it land, but you can't quite see it. So you could try to spray it, or you're going to have to walk up to it to clear it and get confirmation. And if you don't use it, you're actually denying yourself so much information, because the defenders, can't get advanced information on any early rotates or space taken over on the B side. And that way, the only confidence you can have of taking over mid or holding from nest. So it denies a lot of information, and also lets you know if there's going to be some sort of weird aggression coming out. Does the op oftentimes come out and post up once, they're able to buy it, things like that. Advancing where you start that line of scrimmage right away from the start of the round in a game where you're already starting so close to each other, that is big map control. Now, you may be asking yourselves, well, if you're constantly trying to throw this forward, which they do a lot of the rounds, then how are you watching your flank? It's as if you don't really have a sentinel. And that might be true. But if you take a look at this Breeze comp, let me bring this back up full screen, you have quite a few options. You have a Sova, who can still provide really good long-range support on a map like Breeze. You have the Astra, who's always going to have global presence on any map. And then you still have Yoru. You still have even VETO. Both of them could TP back and catch the flank, or cover the flank and then join the team late. But on a much faster scale, something like that. Now, they do this a couple times throughout, and what I was showcasing earlier with the trip here, sometimes they'll put it on this crossroad. Sometimes Yuto will just hold here. You know, he'll be holding from here, and then he'll just toss this on his way over to join his team over on A. So you have these variations as well, where you can place it at different times, guaranteeing you different information, and that forces the enemies to constantly guess how much information you've actually secured for yourself. Now, taking a look at, a little bit more of a straightforward one that maybe most of you have even tried in your own ranked games is being able to put this strip over by the door. Now, it lands right away, and they have smokes on both sides. This denies information from here and here. I like the fact that they throw it right away, because here's the thing. You're already planning on hitting hard in the middle of the map. If there is someone indoors, you know immediately that it's either going to be a fight, so we have to be prepared, or that we want to back off. But if nobody does jump right into this, what you can now do is you can go into this smoke, whether it's with the Yoru or somebody else. You can ignore that and go out this way because you have your back covered. It suddenly just allows you to kind of ignore this part of the map for the first 20 to 40 seconds, depending on how the rest of the movement goes. So again, usage like this where you're guaranteeing early initiative deep past your barrier over on A main. You're guaranteeing deep initiative past the barrier in mid with your traps and your smokes. And then you have someone else even lurking deep up elbow. It's a lot of instant advantages on the map control. And a VETO is a big part of that. Now, it's the same thing on defense as well. You're able to get so much more map control as the barriers drop. And if we take a look here, instantly, right as the timer starts counting down, trap gets thrown here. This one's kind of hard to hear as well unless you run up, and you're definitely not going to see it land if you have the right lineup. Some other rounds we see Yuto placing it just on elbow so that he can ignore it and go over here, or at the very least, you can go for these crosses later on in the rotations, and knowing that they're not going to have a clear angle up from elbow. But again, keeping that variation, saying that I have mid control. Also, what does this allow you to do? Either one, it allows one person in mid, somewhere around nest or pushing up, to take control of mid and get initiative without having to invest more people. One of the things that I think a lot of people are trying to figure out, especially on the defensive side of Breeze, is the fact that how do you make sure that we have information both here, which is a very deep angle, and all the way through here, right, in the middle of the map. And a lot of times the big answer is, okay, well, we'll have someone watching this way, and then, maybe we can have someone just passively holding here, or then you go nest and someone's watching from door, and that requires two people. Now, this doesn't guarantee that your safety for a pinch on A, but they're prepared for that because they're prepared to fight for main first. They stack heavy over on the A side, and they say if they come through door, if it's a pinch, we can probably match numbers. And if they come all the way through A, we can take control of A main. So they've already thought of a backup plan there as well. So again, getting early map control. The name of the game is let's utilize the fact that this is a throwable, that it's a projectile that I can toss rather than place, and get advantages off the rip early deep into the map and say now we have a much smaller map to work with. Now let's take a look at a couple of rounds on split. One of the other things that you'll notice as we continue to watch some of these rounds is upon the execute, you'll always see the VETO, Yudotan with the VETO, using the interceptor kind of as that second entry, that second piece of util. So you'll send something out first, and then you'll instantly set up the interceptor so that any reaction skills, especially things like mollies, can't block the rest of the team, meaning that you can guarantee more people are actually going with the execute that you want. But taking a look at this round, now this is going to be GE's first buy round. Over on round 3 of Split, you already have, of course, a teleport here for VETO set up in sewer, so that's a little bit of a safety play. Sometimes what you'll do with this as well is the fact that you can now go lurk heavy over by ramps, and then whether you get contact or not, you can just TP out, and they aren't sure if you fully crossed or not. Or, at the very least, you don't have to check against anybody who's holding that long sight line. So you can get out pretty safely. So this is just a good one. Obviously, it just gets you out safely. You can play the map a little bit better as well and leave question marks over by the A side. But as they play through this, I am just impressed with the fact that they also have so many variations on this. It's not just, I always throw, the trap right away off the rip. It's not like you're always tossing in a mid or over on ramps or something like that. But this time you're saying, okay, we're going to take contact. We're going to play it a little bit slower. So we're going to intercept her first to make sure we're not getting rushed. And then another thing to note, Yudotan does not shy away, right? You're playing a single duelist. VETO is kind of acting as that secondary duelist to join with the team. Now that the plant is going through, we're going to see Yudotan help set up in the post plant, stays safe, making sure getting ready for the trade, and then tosses the trap over into the smoke in heaven. Now, it kind of works out because PaperX wasn't anywhere near to hear this land exactly. But even if they did, again, they'd have to clear it. There was a smoke, so they can't clear it right away without triggering it. So they would have had to wait, and it would have bought time anyway. It actually pays off a lot in this round because Jing is just going to try to blast pack through this. And honestly, Jing was having a lot of trouble fighting against this VETO throughout this entire match. There you go. He gets tripped. He's decayed. And so that's an easy kill for Autumn. And that's a solid post plant. So that's the other thing, is that you just have this flexibility with the VETO, right? You can toss the trap early to try to get some good map control. But if you have other plans, you can now use it purely for post plant. And the thing that's good about that, I think, is it's the same thing as a Waylay or a Yoru or sometimes even a Chamber, although I think Chamber is a little bit more straightforward but stronger because your TP, for instance, is instant or near instant. But when it comes to the VETO, you now put in the threat that, okay, they might have the VETO trap set up in the post plant. We have to make sure we kind of watch out for that, or at least check for it before we go for our retake. But at the same time, you're like, okay, well, we have to make sure we're either in range to hear it, being tossed somewhere, or we have to check if they've, on our rotates, that they might be trying to catch us off guard. And then there's also the option of, but it is a Sentinel. The flank may not always be guaranteed. It's not like you're going up against a Sage and it's, okay, well, we can always pressure this, which means even if they have an answer, that means at least one person has to stay here so I can dwindle their numbers on site. You can't guarantee that. You just do not know where this is going to land once you're playing against a VETO like Yudotan, where he's able to change up that play with his team, mind you, and say sometimes it's for the post plant, sometimes it's to get early map control, sometimes it's to watch the flank, which he does. Sometimes he just goes for very traditional setups. Sometimes he puts up there to cover the flank. He goes somewhere else to, go for the lurk. The variations are absolutely thorough and really utilizing the full arsenal that VETO brings. Let's take a look at round 7. We're going to take a look at 2 rounds in a row here, but round 7, I know what it's going to look like, but what I want you to know is the fact that they are very cautiously using the VETO as a kind of secondary duelist. So we're going to see them go through heaven, and Yudotan just TPs way past the smoke. He does die immediately, but it's an instant trade. And what I like about this is the fact that you can go past it and pressure the smoke. If someone's also watching outside the smoke, that's information for you, right? Or you can make the noise and whoever's in the smoke now has to watch out for both angles. Either way, at most, you're risking losing one person, whether it's the VETO or whoever is meant to trade, and then you're able to still carry on through the site. He also, it does look like, goes for a little jump peek into the smoke. If you look at the minimap here, we can slow it down. Goes for, a little swivel and a jump. So it does look like he's going for a jump peek into the smoke for his team. Clears out the smoke, then TP's past. And yes, Devi is pretty much lined up, but they do this a couple times. Not all the time, but they do this a couple times where they'll make sure that Yudotan is TPing forward, and then someone is there for the trade immediately. So whether Yudo gets sacrificed, or they're both quick enough that they 2v1 them, or if the other person dies, sometimes Yudotan will be the one that has to get the kill. They are at least saying that we're not losing more members, right? This is much safer than, say, going, okay, let's have 3 people run through the smoke one by one in perfect spacing. And if the spacing is just a little off and, Devi's having a great day, then he might just go bop, bop, bop and get a triple kill. You're not risking that as much because the angles are going to be much wider. So you're widening those angles, spreading out those crosshairs, but also acting as that secondary duelist who can make sure to skip some of that danger and get information ahead. And Yudotan just isn't afraid to do this. On attack, he's almost always with the team during the execute. He might be on a lurk or something like that for the beginning part of the round, but he's always there when they're making it onto the site. But again, the enemies don't know if the trap is watching their flank or not, so they don't really have confirmation that the flank is a weak spot, or that the post plant's going to be weak, or whatever else it might be. So I think the variation, but then the confidence and the game plan to stick with the team is very good. And again, you're utilizing all of those abilities to their greatest extent on the attacking side. Interceptor to make sure that second utility coming out doesn't delay you like Molly's. TPs to help go in. We'll take a look at another round here in a second, and then of course the trip in various ways. Round 12, and this is pretty much just VETO's dream if you kind of let it play it out here. You're going to see the execute happen. Haunt goes through. You're kind of creeping past. People run through. Okay, it's a trade. It still seems okay. Showstopper comes out. VETO's already TP'd in the smoke. He goes for the kill, and then he immediately cancels the Showstopper. In case you missed that and you didn't watch this live, insane plays here. All right, first of all, we're going to see people try to peek out of the smoke first. You already see the VETO has a TP set up. Watch where the TP is set up. If you look carefully at the minimap, it is just barely at the edge of the smoke. Now, I don't know if he intended it to try to get into the smoke, but I do think this was intentional because obviously into the smoke is a big risk. But right outside, it kind of causes that confusion. It gives you an extra angle. You can still clear the smoke on your own terms. So the rest of the team starts walking in. The Yoru TP's deep into max height, gets taken out. But you're right outside the smoke. Now you're hearing the Showstopper. So then Yudotan's going to go into the smoke. Mind you, the Interceptor's been put up, but hasn't been used because they haven't heard anything. And then he weaves around the smoke, dodges the Showstopper, gets the trade, instantly turns it on, cancels the Showstopper. And then that's an easy trade for Yudotan. He's able to peek out on a bit of a surprise angle and tempo. All right. We'll take a look at two scenarios on defense here. One is purely about the setups on defense, and then another is just about VETO. But this one, it starts already. It starts already as we come back. Before this, it was replays. We come back to the game screen, or I guess a timeout. We come back to the game screen. Take a look at the minimap. VETO has already set up the Interceptor to help stall on B, right? So that secures B a little bit. He already had a TP, the crosscut, set up in stairs. So he runs up, he TPs into stairs. He's going to pick this one up, and then he's going to go all the way over to A. So maximizing his time usage in the pre-round. Not having to run around, but saying, I can cover both sites by using my TPs because I can pick them back up. And then reset them in different positions for the rest of the round. So Interceptor there, now you TP back over, and then he's going to look to set things up over on A. He's going to put his trap over by ramps, and then he's going to put a TP, a crosscut, right outside of that corner, outside of the box, so that if you do hear someone trip that, right, and it's pretty likely that anyone coming up from vents would trip it as well, you can actually go in and try to catch them off guard. Now, you do get deafened when you get tripped by this. Obviously, your teammates could still hear the TP, but you won't hear the crosscut if you're the one who steps onto the trip. And even if not, just the fact that, okay, we can kind of leave this relatively empty, and I can fill it if need be. But if there's a heavy fight on A, I mean, there's a heavy fight on A, there's just a lot of people here, so we just need the information whether they're heaven. So that's already a good setup. And then he sets up his second crosscut again for safety. And it should also be noted, yep, he just turns it on. He has his own ult as well. So now he's safe from all the util on A. A util execute is going to get much weaker on the A side. And on B, you have the Interceptor for your teammates. So full both site coverage from the VETO to help delay, and then good information and potential backup over on Heaven himself. It also can act as an exit out of the site. He's got that extra one over by screens for safety. And I just think this is, again, a really good setup where you're just squeezing out every last drop of what you can do with VETO when you have the full arsenal. Last but not least, I want to take a look at the very next round, round 17, where you only have one crosscut setup, right? It's set up over by the spawn, so this basically lets you say that I am going to go for fast rotates through safety of spawn, whether on both sides, right? You can take it from stairs and cut that time, or you can take it from here and cut that time from A heaven. And also it allows you, again, to go a little bit faster without having to go through vents. So you have that TP, pretty standard. You have the trip over on A main, but he holds on to his second TP. And this is maybe just a tip for people who haven't played much Veto, but they'd like to. And obviously, I would expect most pros to at least be thinking about this. Is the fact that you don't need to set up both TPs at the start of the round. You don't. You can just hold on to one and use it for safety later. And he's going to set it up later here in a pretty conservative spot, right? He's going to go into elbow over on A site, and he'll set it up just as a safety net as he looks to try to hold that angle alongside the fade. But the reason I think it's important to do this is because if you have other game plans where you don't need to do the full setup, again, that extra crosscut, whether it's to cross certain gaps that you're not sure of, whether it's to, again, try to save time, maybe you're on site and you can just use it to jump onto heaven to save cut time on the rotate, something like that, when you know it's clear, it is good to have that backup plan. So you don't have to do that either. It's not like he's just running on autopilot of, well, this is my setup, this is how Veto plays in the pre-round. He's constantly thinking about how he can utilize that on the fly alongside his teammates. Now, additionally, on the defensive side, I actually think in a lot of their games, I see Yudotan using the Veto TPs within or in and around the site quite a bit to anchor, but constantly just reposition. And I'm a big fan of that because initially everyone kind of thought of it as, okay, well, it just helps you TP really fast. You can set up both, and you're just constantly being able to say, okay, I'm going to just stay on this side and then go over, or I can walk over and then TP back. And that's good, too. It's good to have that variation. But the fact that he's got a couple nice setups within the sites as well on different maps where he can help flood, get out to safety, cover a different angle, right? Make sure that you're doing a staggered defense on your own, things like that. Again, creates this question mark of, well, is the Veto set up for fast rotates? Or is the Veto set up to flood the site? Is the Veto set up to just, annoy us and delay time? I'm not quite sure. And I think that variance is so big. So defense was already fairly decent for a lot of teams, I think. Some teams a little bit more advanced. But the fact that, again, you're using that trap, the throwable, so aggressively on attack and in different ways. And then on top of that, the timing he has with the interceptor, the fact that he's constantly, confidently walking into enemy util and ignoring it without kind of, doing the whole muscle memory, I'm going to dodge the flash even though I have my ult up, things like that. It just showcases he and the team have spent so much time with the Veto. So I was very impressed so far. The favorite Veto that I've watched, but albeit, I haven't watched all the regions in all the Veto games. So if you think there's another great one or maybe even a better one, definitely let me know down in the comments below. But if you haven't watched their games, honestly, you can watch either one. But I would recommend the Piper X game because it was actually really fun overall. I highly recommend checking out Yudotan's VODs to see how he plays that Veto. That's going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed the content, let me know what else you'd like to see down in the comments below. And of course, a like always helps tremendously on the videos. And if you're new around here, don't forget to subscribe for more information in a lot of these VCT matches. That's it for now, and I'll see you guys next time.